When was the last time you thought to yourself, that's a great story? What was the story? Why did you like it so much? And our big question for this lesson, what makes this story worth telling? Go ahead and take a minute and pause this video and think of how you would answer these questions for yourself. The story that comes to my mind is about a young boy who runs away to live alone in the mountains. I like this story because it connected with my strong feelings of independence and my love for the outdoors. The main character, Sam Gribley, fights against nature to survive in the woods and demonstrates wilderness survival skills throughout the book. The author even draws pictures of some of the wilderness survival tools that Sam created to help him stay alive. In case you're wondering, the book's title is My Side of the Mountain. It was written by Gene Craighead George. Will the team make the final play and score the game-winning touchdown? Will the detective find out who the murderer is in time? Can Sam Gribley survive his first winter alone in the woods? Good stories are all around us. Today we're going to talk about how a good story keeps you turning pages or leaves you breathless at the edge of your seat. Johnny Tremaine, a poor orphan silversmith, believes he is related to the wealthy merchant Mr. Light. Johnny has proof, a cup engraved with the Light family name. Let's see how Mr. Light reacts to the news. I think, said Mr. Light quietly, all of you ladies and gentlemen will agree that this cup our cousin, is it, has brought back tonight is one of this set. There was a murmur of assent. Johnny could hear the tiny tinkle, seemingly far away, of Miss Lavinia's spinet. It is perfectly obvious that this cup now stands where it belongs. The question is, how was it ever separated from its fellows? Johnny felt that everyone there except himself knew the answer to this question. In fact, the merchant's voice was as smooth as oil, I declare this to be the very cup which was stolen from me by thieves. They broke through yonder window on the 23rd of last August. Sheriff, I order you to arrest this boy for burglary. Let's talk about our question. How does Mr. Light react to Johnny's claim? From the beginning, we can tell that something is wrong here. Why, for example, is Mr. Light speaking quietly? Why does he refer to Johnny as his, cousin, is it? Why does he inquire into how the cup was separated from the others? And why does Johnny feel like everyone except him knows the answer to Mr. Light's question? Now, all these questions bring us back to the big question we asked during our warm-up, which is, what is it that makes a story worth telling? The author has just introduced us to a conflict in the story. Mr. Light accuses Johnny of burglary and orders him to be arrested. A conflict is a struggle between opposing forces. We want to know what happens next because we're interested in seeing how Johnny will react to Mr. Light's accusation, and we want to know whether he really will be arrested. The writer introduces the conflict to us slowly and gradually, building suspense along the way until the conflict is finally revealed to us in full. A good conflict is one thing that makes a story worth reading. In this story, a conflict is taking place between the protagonist, Johnny, and the antagonist, Mr. Light. This is an example of an external conflict, or a conflict that takes place between the protagonist and an outside force. In this case, the conflict was between Johnny, and the outside force was Mr. Light. Scholars call this kind of external conflict character versus character. Now, a note about the word external itself. The word external uses the prefix ex, which means out of or away from. You may have seen this prefix used in words like exit or expel. Think about that prefix when you're trying to remember what external conflict is. A few other kinds of external conflict are displayed to the left. Feel free to pause the movie now and review the other kinds of external conflict. As you can probably tell, the graphic to the left is incomplete. Let's take a look at another kind of conflict faced by a character in a different story, and then fill in the missing piece of our chart. First, some background. Eva is thrilled when her friend Kanisha moves back to town. However, most of the time Kanisha is too involved with the popular crowd to acknowledge Eva. In fact, Kanisha is only nice when she wants to copy Eva's homework. Let's see what we can find out about Eva's conflict. Eva knew it wasn't right to copy other people's work, but it wasn't as bad as cheating on a test, and a lot of people did it. She knew that didn't make it right, but still it didn't seem like such a big sin. And besides, she wasn't the copier. The whole thing made her feel pretty mixed up. She didn't know for sure if she had let Kanisha copy her work because of all that stuff Grandma Evelyn said about being nice to Kanisha, or because she wanted to get in with Kanisha and be one of the cool people. What details suggest that Eva is conflicted about her decision to let Kanisha copy her homework? One detail is boxed for you. Go ahead and pause the movie now and take a minute to do some analysis. Okay, let's look at some of the details that lead us to believe a conflict is brewing in the story. Eva begins to rationalize her actions, even though she knew it wasn't right to copy other people's work. She claims that what she did wasn't as bad as cheating on a test. She also made the excuse that a lot of people did it, and it didn't seem like such a big sin. She reasoned that she wasn't the copier. But after all this, she still admitted that the whole thing made her feel pretty mixed up. This is an example of an internal conflict, or a conflict that takes place within the mind of a character. Scholars sometimes label this type of conflict character versus self because the character must resolve his or her inner turmoil in order to make a good choice. Let's take a look at our conflict chart and fill in the missing segment. Another example of internal conflict is displayed on the chart. Take a moment to pause the video and review that sample. In our next video, we're going to learn about another important literary technique that authors use to make a story worth reading. Can you guess what it is? I'll give you a hint. It's driven by the conflict. Check our next video to see if you guessed correctly.